Hi, I'm Norm Abram. Welcome to the new Yankee Workshop. Recently, we were in Low Country, Savannah, Georgia. Some friends showed me an antique desk. They call it a planter's desk. I think you're going to like it, and we're going to build one today right here.
Every Saturday morning for more than 2 decades, millions of Americans did the same thing. They poured a cup of coffee, settled into a chair, and turned on a television program where a quiet man in a flannel shirt walked into a barn workshop and started building furniture.
No drama. No competition.
No manufactured tension between contestants. Just a carpenter, his tools, and a piece of wood that was going to become something beautiful by the end of 30 minutes. The new Yankee Workshop ran for 21 seasons on public television, produced 235 episodes, and introduced more Americans to the craft of furniture making than any single institution in the country's history. And then, in 2009, it simply stopped. No farewell special. No tearful final episode. No announcement that explained what had happened or why the barn doors had closed for good. For the millions of viewers who had organized their weekend mornings around the show, the ending felt abrupt and genuinely unexplained. Theories circulated in woodworking forums and workshop conversations for years afterward. Was it a health issue? A conflict with the network? A business dispute with the corporate sponsors whose logos had graced the workshop walls for years? The actual reason the show ended is more complicated than any single explanation, and it involves the intersection of a global economic catastrophe, the particular and exhausting demands of being television's most trusted craftsman, and a media landscape that was changing faster than any PBS production budget could accommodate. To understand why the new Yankee Workshop ended when it did, it helps to understand exactly what the show was and what it required to produce. Norm Abram, the show's host and master carpenter, was not a television personality who happened to work with wood. He was a genuine production carpenter from the Boston area who had been brought into public television through a series of circumstances that began when producer Russell Morrish hired him to build a barn on his property in the late 1970s. Morrish, who had already transformed American television by bringing Julia Child's Kitchen into the living rooms of ordinary people, recognized in Abram something that was genuinely rare in broadcasting. A person whose expertise was so complete and whose manner of explaining it was so calm and clear that watching him work felt like an education rather than a performance. When Morrish launched This Old House on WGBH Boston in 1979, Abram was brought on as the master carpenter, the person responsible for the structural and finish work that the show's renovation projects required. He became, over the following decade, one of public television's most recognizable figures without ever seeming to pursue recognition. The new Yankee Workshop debuted in 1989 as a spin-off that gave Abram his own dedicated space and his own dedicated subject matter. Where This Old House covered the full breadth of home renovation, the new Yankee Workshop was focused entirely on furniture, specifically, on building high-quality period pieces using a combination of traditional designs and modern power tools. The premise was straightforward and the execution was extraordinary. Every episode, Abram would walk viewers through the complete construction of a single piece of furniture, from the initial rough lumber to the finished project, explaining every step with a methodical precision of someone who had built the piece before and knew exactly where the difficulties were going to appear. That last detail is important, because it was central to how the show was actually produced. Abram did not simply show up on filming day and build a piece of furniture in front of the cameras. His process involved constructing a complete prototype of every project in his own time before production began, working out the sequencing, identifying the potential problems, refining the jigs and setups that would make the production version go smoothly. Only after that invisible first pass was complete did the cameras roll. This meant that every episode viewers watched represented at least twice the building effort that was visible on screen, and often considerably more when the planning and drawing preparation were factored in. The measured drawings that accompanied each episode and were sold to viewers were another dimension of the show's production demands that received little public attention. These were precise, professional technical drawings of every project, drafted to the standards required for actual construction use, and they represented a significant portion of what made the show a functional educational product rather than simply an entertaining program. Viewers who wanted to build what Norm built could purchase the drawings and have everything they needed to replicate the project in their own shops. Creating these drawings for 235 projects across 21 seasons represented an enormous body of technical work that existed entirely outside the filming schedule. By 2009, Norm Abram had spent 19 years producing the new Yankee Workshop while simultaneously maintaining his role on This Old House. The cumulative weight of that sustained creative and physical output was not nothing. The economic context of 2009 is essential to understanding the timing of the show's conclusion. The financial crisis of 2008 and the severe recession that followed produced one of the most dramatic collapses in the American housing market since the Great Depression. Home construction, which had been running at historically elevated levels through the mid-2000s driven by the combination of loose lending standards and speculative investment, essentially halted. The ripple effects moved through every industry connected to housing, and the power tool and woodworking equipment sector was directly in that path. Companies like Delta, Porter Cable, and the other major tool manufacturers whose sponsorship had been foundational to the new Yankee Workshop's production model were facing their own severe financial pressures. Marketing budgets across the tool industry contracted sharply. Sponsorship commitments that had seemed stable were suddenly uncertain. For a program that depended on corporate support to fund the kind of high-quality production that WGBH Boston had maintained across 2 decades, the collapse of the sponsorship market was not a problem that could be managed through editorial adjustments or cost reductions. It was a structural threat to the show's continued existence. Russell Morrish, who had created the new Yankee Workshop and remained its executive producer throughout its run, had spent his career making deliberate and sometimes counterintuitive decisions about the programs he oversaw. His track record, which included not only This Old House and the new Yankee Workshop but also the original groundbreaking collaboration with Julia Child that had essentially invented the television cooking genre, reflected a consistent philosophy that quality and integrity mattered more than longevity for its own sake. When the combination of economic pressure and production strain made it clear that continuing the show would require either significant compromises to its standards or an unsustainable level of effort from an already taxed host, Morrish made the decision that the show's body of work was complete. The existing library of 235 episodes represented a comprehensive and coherent achievement. Allowing it to continue at a diminished level would not add to that achievement. It would dilute it. Norm Abram was 59 years old when the new Yankee Workshop recorded its final season. He had been working in television since 1979, 3 decades during which the expectations placed on him had only grown. In the early seasons of This Old House, he was one member of a team, sharing the weight of production with hosts and other specialists. The new Yankee Workshop was a different proposition entirely. A solo show where every technical decision, every measurement, every word of explanation, and every finished project rested on his performance and his expertise. He has spoken in interviews across the years about the particular pressure of being the person that millions of woodworkers looked to as the definitive authority, the standard against which their own work was measured. That level of trust is genuinely heavy. It means that errors cannot simply be acknowledged and moved past. They become events that affect the confidence of viewers who have internalized what Norm does as the correct approach. It means maintaining a standard of preparation and precision that is exhausting over time in ways that the 30-minute episodes never revealed. The shift happening in the media landscape in 2009 was another factor that informed the decision, though it operated more subtly than the economic crisis. YouTube had been acquired by Google in 2006 and was growing rapidly as a platform for instructional content. A new generation of woodworking creators was beginning to emerge, people who filmed themselves in their own garages with consumer cameras and uploaded the results without the production overhead that a PBS broadcast required. This was not, in 2009, a fully developed alternative to broadcast television woodworking. The quality and depth of content available online was still rudimentary compared to what the new Yankee Workshop offered. But the direction of travel was visible to anyone who understood media production, and it was clear that the era in which high-budget, sponsor-dependent public television was the dominant mode of instructional content delivery was beginning to change. Continuing a show whose production model was built for an earlier media environment, while the environment itself was transforming, would have required either substantial reinvention or a commitment to deliberate anachronism. Neither option aligned with what Morrish and Abram had built together. What the show left behind when it concluded was a body of work that has only grown in cultural significance with time. The 235 projects that Norm Abram built on camera across 21 seasons range from relatively accessible entry-level pieces to extraordinarily complex period reproductions, Chippendale highboys, Goddard Townsend blockfront chests, elaborate roll-top desks, that represent some of the most demanding furniture making in the American tradition. The measured drawings he produced for each project exist as a permanent technical library that serious woodworkers still reference decades after the episodes aired. The techniques he demonstrated, many of them popularized for a mass audience for the first time through the show, continue to be taught in woodworking classes and described in woodworking literature using frameworks that Norm established. The biscuit joiner, which he introduced to millions of American hobbyists who had never encountered plate joinery before, became a standard fixture of home workshops largely because of his demonstrations. The approach to jig building as a method of achieving consistent, repeatable results. His insistence that precision was not about manual dexterity alone but about the quality of your setups, reshaped how an entire generation of hobbyist woodworkers thought about their practice. The debate that followed him across the show's run about power tools versus hand tools, about efficiency versus purity, about whether a router and a dovetail jig represented a compromise of craft or a sensible use of available technology, was a debate that Norm himself addressed implicitly rather than explicitly in every episode. His background was in production carpentry, where time has a direct relationship with cost and where the goal is always a high-quality finished product delivered within a realistic schedule. He was not performing hand-cut joinery as a spiritual practice or as a demonstration of manual virtuosity. He was making furniture, and he used whatever combination of tools allowed him to make it well within the time and resources available. The fact that this philosophy occasionally irritated woodworking purists who felt that machine-cut joints were a form of cheating was something he absorbed without apparent distress. He understood that his audience was primarily made up of people with limited shop time, limited budgets, and significant ambitions for their finished projects, and he designed his instruction accordingly. The safety emphasis that became one of his most recognized television habits was grounded in the same practical philosophy. Every episode opened with a reminder about eye and ear protection, about reading the safety information that came with power tools, about the responsibility every person operating machinery carries for their own well-being. This was not simply a legal requirement imposed by the network or the sponsors, though those pressures were real. It reflected Norm's genuine understanding of what rotating blades and high-speed motors could do when the person operating them was inattentive, underprepared, or simply unlucky. He had spent decades in professional shops and on construction sites where the consequences of carelessness were immediate and sometimes permanent. The safety monologue that became a running joke in affectionate parodies of the show was, underneath the familiarity it eventually acquired, a sincere statement about responsibility. It was also, characteristically, a way of treating his audience as adults who deserved honest information rather than reassurance. After 2009, Abram continued to appear on This Old House for over a decade, maintaining his presence in the world of public television home improvement while stepping back from the particular demands of a solo production. His official farewell from television came in 2022 through a tribute episode titled, The House That Norm Built, which gathered colleagues and collaborators to recognize his 4 decades of contribution to the genre he had helped define. The response from the woodworking community and from the broader audience of people who had watched him over the years was a reminder of how deeply the show had embedded itself in the cultural life of a significant portion of the American public. He now lives privately, reportedly working in his own workshop without cameras or production schedules, building at the pace that suits him after a lifetime of building on other people's timelines. The show's afterlife in the digital era has been more substantial than anyone might have predicted from the vantage point of 2009. The official new Yankee Workshop YouTube channel began uploading remastered versions of classic episodes, and the response from a new generation of viewers who had never watched the show in its original broadcast form was striking. Young woodworkers who had grown up with the faster, more fragmented content of platform-native creators discovered in Norm's methodical pacing a quality that the algorithmic pressures of social media rarely permit: genuine depth, genuine patience, genuine respect for the time required to do something well. The show became, for many of them, something closer to the meditative experience that longtime fans had always described. The comparison to Bob Ross, which had circulated informally for years, suddenly made more cultural sense to a generation that had rediscovered Ross's painting videos through the same digital channels. The woodworking content that exists today on YouTube and other platforms, and there is a remarkable amount of it, produced by creators of widely varying skill and approach, exists in a landscape that Norm Abram did not create but that his influence shaped in ways that are visible if you know where to look. The shop-built jig. The dedicated assembly table. The insistence on measuring setups rather than trusting eyeballing. The philosophy that a finished piece of furniture in someone's home is more valuable than an unfinished demonstration of technical purity. These ideas run through the contemporary woodworking content world like a river whose source is upstream and out of view. Creators who were born after the new Yankee Workshop premiered have internalized principles that originated with a man in a flannel shirt in a Massachusetts barn, transmitted through teachers and videos and shop conversations across the intervening decades. The actual reason the new Yankee Workshop ended in 2009 is not one thing. It is the convergence of several things happening simultaneously: the economic crisis that destroyed the sponsorship model, the genuine exhaustion of a man who had carried a demanding production for 2 decades, the changing media environment that made the existing production framework increasingly difficult to justify, and the considered decision by the people responsible for the show that a complete and excellent body of work was more valuable than a continuing but diminished one. It ended, in other words, for the same kinds of reasons that good things often end, not because they failed, but because the conditions that sustained them changed in ways that could not be ignored, and because the people involved had enough respect for what they had built to stop before the building became something less than it had been. The barn doors closed. The sawdust settled. And the work remained.